Hi, good day. My name is Kimberly Ray from PCED 06501P, and this is my oral presentation for the practice exercises. So for practice exercise 1, I choose the part C, which is the vector notation. So for vector AB, we have the x component of 1.999 unit, and for y component we have 3.998 unit. So for its vector notation, lalagyan natin siya ng unit vector j and unit vector I. So una yung I, we have the x component 1.999 and then the unit vector I plus 3.998 and then the unit vector of j. So for vector AC, we have x component of 5.996 unit, and for y component we have 1.9998 unit. So for its vector notation, we have 5.996, then yung unit vector ng I plus 1.9998 and then the unit vector of j. So for vector AB, we have for x component 2.998 unit, and for y component we have negative 2.998 unit, and for the vector notation we have 2.998 and then vector notation I plus negative 2.998 vector notation j. So since negative na to, pwede na natin gamitin. Magiging negative na lang siya. Negative na yung operation nito. So ayan na siya. 2.998 unit vector of I minus 2.998 unit vector of j. So for vector A to C, for x component we have negative 4 unit, and then for y component we have 3 unit, and then for vector notation negative 4, then vector notation I plus 3 vector notation j. And then for vector AG, we have negative 1.909 unit, and then y component is negative 3.875 unit. For vector notation, we have negative 1.909 vector notation I and minus 3.875 vector notation j. We have vector notation j. So for vector A and F, we have negative 3.998 unit for x component, and for y component we have negative 1.998 unit, and for our vector notation we just have to write the x and y component with the vector notation of I and j. So for x component we have 3.998 and then the vector notation I minus 1.998 and then vector notation j. Ayan. So this is how you write vector notation. For practice exercise number 2 is I choose the problem number 2, which is according to its computer, a robot that left its closet and traveled 1,200 meters had an average speed of 20 meters per second. How long did the trip take? So, first, let's identify what are the given. So here, we can see the robot that left its closet and traveled 1,200 meters. So, the distance is 1,200 meters. Had an average speed of 20 meters per second. So, we have also an average speed of 20 meters per second. How long did the trip take? So, how long? How long is pertaining to time. So, time here is what we have to find. So, by the given, we can use the formula of average speed, which is average speed is equals to distance over time. So, we have to substitute the given. So, makikita naman natin dito, given na yung average speed. So, given yung average speed na 20 meter per second. At meron din tayong distance, which is 1,200 meter. And then, ang hinahanap natin ay yung time. So, in order to find the formula of time, we can cross-multiply. Pupunta dito yung 1,200 meter. And then, time 20 meter per second. So, divide both sides by 20 meter per second para maiwan na yung time. We can cancel this. Matitira dito ay time. Dito ko na ilalagay. And then 1,200 meter over 20 meter is 60. So, cancel na natin tong meter. And then meter, ang natira na lang is second. So, yung hinahanap natin ay time. So, this is the time. The time is 60 seconds. Ayan. So, for practice exercise 3, I choose problem number 1. A baseball is thrown straight upward with a speed of 30 meters per second. How long will it rise? How high will it rise? How long after it leaves the hand will it return to the starting point? And when will its speed be 16 meters per second? So we have 4 problems that we need to identify. So first, what are the given? So, the given is speed of 30 meters per second. So, we have the given 30 meters per second. So, speed of 30 meters per second is the initial velocity of the baseball. So, we also have a gravity that is 9.8 meter per second squared, and the final velocity of 0 meter per second. So, what we have to find is the time. So, in letter A, we have to find is the time. Because the question is how long will it rise. So So we have the formula. I will be using the formula of final speed is equals to initial speed minus the product of gravity and time. So just substitute what are the given. We have final speed of 0 meter per second, and then the initial velocity of 30 meter per second minus gravity of 9.8 meter per second squared, and the time. So use the formula of time. 0 minus 30 meter per second over negative 9.8 meter per second squared. So 0 minus 30 meter per second is negative 30 meter per second, and negative 30 meter per second over negative 9.8 meter per second squared is 3.06. Ayan, seconds na lang yung natitira. Seconds, or approximately 3.1 seconds. So for letter A, we have the time of 3.1 seconds. Next is question in B, how high will it rise? How high? High is height. So we have the formula for letter B. We have the formula of height equals to initial velocity and time minus 1/2 of product of gravity and time squared. So substitute the given. We have initial velocity of 30 meter per second and time, which is here 3.06 second, minus 1/2 of gravity. We have 9.8 meter per second squared. Then the time, which is dito ko na lang lalagay, 3.06 seconds squared. So urong natin. So ito muna, 30 meter per second times 3.6 seconds, and ma-minus mo sa negative 1/2, 9.8 meter per second squared, and 3.06 seconds squared. So height is equals to 45.9184, or approximately 46 meter. So for letter C, the question is how long after it leaves the hand will it return to the starting point? How long? Ibig sabihin, hinahanap natin dito ay time. So for letter C, we have the formula of y equals initial velocity of and time minus 1/2 of the product of gravity times time squared. So substitute. We have this 0. Initial velocity is 30 meter per second. And then time. Ang hinahanap natin dito yung time, ha. Ayan. So we have the gravity, which is 9.8 meter per second squared. And then time squared. So ilalagay natin ito. 30 meter per second time equals to, ito ilalabas lang natin sa kabila, kaya magiging ganyan siya. 9.8 meter per second squared, then times squared. Then cancel natin ito. Yan, isang time na lang ang matitira. Then 1/2 of times 9.8 meter per second squared is 4.9 meter per second squared t, dahil may isa pa dyan, at dito magiging 30 meter per second siya. So, kunin natin yung formula ng time. It's 30 meter per second over 4.9 meter per second squared. So, 30 over 4.9 is 6.1, and then cancel, we have seconds. So, for question C, how long after it leaves the hand will it return to the starting point? We have the answer for 6.1 seconds. So, for letter D, the question is, when will its speed be 16 meter per second? So, we have, for letter D, we have the formula of I use the formula of final velocity equals to initial velocity minus the gravity and time. So, dito, isa-substitute lang natin siya, pero ang gagamitin na natin for its final velocity is itong 16 meter per second. So, we have the final velocity of 16 meter per second equals the initial velocity, which is the 30 meter per second, minus the product of gravity and time. Gravity is 9.8 meter per second squared. And time, kasi nga, when will its speed be 16 meter per second? It's pertaining also sa time. So, substitute para makuha natin yung formula. T is equals to 16 meter per second minus 30 meter per second over negative 9.8 meter per second squared, and then 16 minus 30 over negative 9.8 is 1.4, and we have seconds. So for question D, when will its speed be 16 meter per second is 1.4 seconds. For practice exercise 4, I choose the problem number 1. And problem number 1, once ignited, a small rocket motor on a spacecraft exerts a constant force of 10 Newton for 7.80 seconds. During the burn, the rocket caused the 100 kilogram craft to accelerate uniformly. Determine the acceleration. So, to determine the acceleration, we have to identify first the changes in velocity. So, the given here, the given is 10 Newton, which is force of 10 Newton, then time, which is 7.80 seconds. Then we have also the mass, which is 100 kilogram, and an constant acceleration. We have acceleration, which is constant. So, para makuha natin yung changes in velocity, para makuha natin yung acceleration, kailangan muna nating makuha yung changes in velocity. So, yung gagamitin kong formula is f of t equals to mass times the changes in velocity. So, usin muna natin yung formula. Changes in velocity is equals to force and time over mass. So, substitute the given. We have force of 10 Newton and the time of 7.80 seconds over the mass, which is 100 kilogram. So, 10 times 7.80 over 100 kilogram is 0.78. So, the changes in velocity is 0.78 meter per second. Nakuha na natin yung changes in velocity. Kailangan na, ang sunod naman nating hahanapin, kailangan ma-determine, is yung acceleration. So, yung acceleration, yung formula ng acceleration is changes in velocity over the time. So, lipat ko na. Changes in velocity is equals to 0.78 meter per second, and then yung time andito sa given, which is 7.80 second. So 0.78 over 7.80 is 0.10 meter per second squared. So we have the acceleration of 0.10 meter per second squared. Ayan. For practice exercise 5, I choose the problem number 2. Problem number 2 is, typically a tennis ball hits during a serve travels away at about 51 meter per second. If the ball is at rest mid-air when struck and it has a mass of 0.058 kilogram, what is the change in its momentum on leaving the racket? So, to find the change in momentum, we have to identify first what are the given. So first, we have 51 meter per second, which is the initial velocity. So we have the given of initial velocity 51 meter per second, And we have the final velocity of 0 meter per second because the ball is at rest in mid-air. And we also have a mass of 0.058 kilogram. And we have to find the change in momentum. So, change in momentum. So, the formula of change in momentum is mass times final velocity minus the initial velocity. So, substitute the given. We have mass of 0.58 kilogram and final velocity of 0 meter per second minus the initial velocity of 51 meter per second .58 kilogram times 0 minus 51 meter per second is 2.95 or equivalent to 3 kilogram. So, because ayan, meter per second. So the change in momentum is 3 kilogram meter per second. For practice exercise 6, I choose the problem number 1. So problem number 1, a mass of 1.5 kilogram moves in a circle of radius 25 centimeter at a constant of 2.0 revolution per second. Calculate A, the tangential speed, B, the acceleration, and C, the required centripetal force of the motion. So we have 3 things to find, which is the tangential speed, the acceleration, and the required centripetal force. So first, we have to identify the given. So the given are, we have a mass of 1.5 kilogram, and then we also have radius of 25 centimeter. We have radius of 25 centimeter. So we have to convert this centimeter into meter. So we have 1 meter over 100 meter to convert this centimeter into meter. So 25 times 1 over 100 is 0.25 meter. And we also have a constant 2.0 revolution per second. We have the angular velocity of 2.0 revolution per second. So we also have, or we also need to convert this revolution. So we have 2 pi radian over 1 revolution. So this is equivalent to 4 pi radians per second. So yan, meron na tayong given. We need to find the tangential speed. So, wait lang. We have to find the tangential speed una. So, tangential speed formula is velocity equals to the angular velocity times the radius. So from the given, we have the angular velocity, ito, na 4 pi radians per second. And we also have a radius of, itong radius, 0.25 meter. Ayan. So, 4 pi times 0.25, pi is equivalent to 3.14. So, calculating, we have 3.142 meter per second, or approximately 3.1 meter per second. So we have the tangential speed of 3.1 meter per second. So next thing we have to find is the acceleration. So the acceleration is the product, the velocity over radius. So substitute the given, we have a velocity of 3.142 meter per second over the radius. We have the radius, yung radius ulit, of 0.25 meter. So 3.142 over 0.25 is 39.49 meter per second squared, or approximately 39 meter per second squared. Ayan, so meron na tayong tangential speed and then the acceleration. And then the third we need to find is the centripetal force. So it is force. We have the formula of force is the product of mass and acceleration. So substitute, we have the mass of 1.5 kilogram, and then the acceleration of 39.49 meter per second squared is equals to 59.23 Newton, because force is a Newton. So we have approximately 59 Newton. We have a force of 59 Newton. So for practice exercise 7, I choose problem number 1. How large a force is required to accelerate a 1,300 kilogram car from rest to a speed of 20 meter per second in a distance of 80 meter? So, ang hinahanap dito ay ilang force daw yung kailangan para ma-accelerate yung 1,300 kilogram na car from rest to a speed of 20 meter per second na may distance of 80 meter. So we have to find acceleration and the force. So we have the given of 1,300 kilogram, which is the mass, and a car from rest. So we have the initial velocity of 0 meter per second to a speed of 20 meter per second. So we have the final velocity of 20 meter per second and in a distance of 80 meter per second. So we have the distance. It is horizontal. So we have a x of 80 meter. So first, kailangan nating mahanap is yung required acceleration. So we have to find acceleration. And to find acceleration, I will use the formula. The formula of final velocity equals to initial velocity. We have final velocity squared and initial velocity squared plus 2 and acceleration of the distance. So, para makuha yung formula ng acceleration, we have final velocity squared minus the initial velocity squared over this 2x. Yan. So, we have the formula of acceleration. So, kailangan na lang natin is i-substitute yung given. So, we have the final velocity, which is 20 meter per second squared minus the initial velocity, which is 0 meter per second, and then it is also squared over 2, and then yung distance, which is 80 meter. Ito yung distance natin. Distance is 80 meter. So, calculate. We have a acceleration of 2. We have the acceleration of 2.5 meter per second squared. So, ayan, meron na tayong acceleration. Kailangan na lang natin mahanap is yung force. How large is a force? Para ma-accelerate yung 1,300 kilogram car. So, we know that the formula of force is the product of mass and acceleration. So, we have the mass of 1,300 kilogram. And then we also have the acceleration of 2.5 meter per second squared. So, we have a force of 3,250 Newton. So, we have to convert this into a kilonewton. To convert Newton to kilonewton is times 1 kilonewton is equivalent to 1,000 Newton. So, calculate. We have 3.3 kilonewton. So, we have the acceleration and the force, which is equivalent to 3.3 kilonewton.